Shalom. So another daily meditation, and I believe it's going to be a very, very important meditation because it's being missed and being ignored, or it's not being instilled or planted inside brothers who are, just emptily rebuking other brothers. But yeah, I want to discuss something about this, and it's the parable of the unforgiving debtor. This is in the NLT. So why I would like, so why do I want to discuss this? Well, in this truth, we all want and need to keep the law. Some brothers will find it hard to keep the law because of circumstances like work. Some brothers will have work on the Sabbath, right? Not just because they need to work, but they have to provide for, what do you call this? What they have to provide for their um, they have to provide for their children, their family. And I notice, other brothers who are not being merciful to brothers who are still trying to get out of the captivity. And an example of this, for example, you yourself, right? You help someone to get out of prison, because right now we are in the prison. We serve our enemies, we serve other gods. That's why we are in this captivity, right? But in this captivity, we have to get out of this prison. So now it starts with you. And now once you are able to set free yourself, you will then what? Help other brothers, right? And the first brother you will help, for example, got free, was able to keep other laws, Sabbath, the feast days, because you help them somehow, for example, financially. And then another brother, and then, for example, that brother will, instead of helping another brother, he will instead rebuke and harass other brothers who are trying to get out of this captivity by keeping the law. You know. Instead of helping them financially, helping them spiritually, providing for them, they just emptily rebuke. You know. That's why I believe this verse is Matthew 18 verse 21 to 35 is very, very important. And I would like to read it in the NLT version because the King James version is a bit deep, but you can take the account for yourself and read it, right? So let's explore this verse, right? And this is the parable of the unforgiving debtor, right? So put an example in your mind. You help someone, you help a brother, and that brother, instead of helping another brother, instead he didn't help, but just but just straightfully rebuke other brothers who are still trying to keep the law, right? So keep that in mind, because that is called an unforgiving debtor, right? So let's go to verse 23. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. So think of a brother who asks money from you because he wants to get out of you know problems in life. And once he gets out of the problems in life, he can then keep the law, right? Verse 24. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay, so his master ordered that he be sold, along with his wife, his children, and everything he owed to pay the debt. Verse 26. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, please be patient with me. So brother one said, please be patient with me. I'm having troubles with financial stuff. finding it hard to keep the law. You know, for example, the Sabbath. I have work on the Sabbath, but no, I still kept sinning because. Anyways, verse 27. Then his master was filled with pity for him. This is the Most High. You know, we are under, you know, we're under the hands of our captors, right? That's why it's hard to get out of that Saturday work because we have to what rest on the Sabbath day, right? But there are brothers who are still forced to go to work on the Saturday. Reading on, and he released him and forgave his debt. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s, right? So brother one, was able to, for example, is able to get out of debt free. Now he's going to what? He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment, right? So brother 2 is struggling to keep the Sabbath day, right? But brother 1, instead of helping him financially, he what? He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. And verse 29, his fellow servant fell down before him and begged for a little more time. Be patient with me and pay it. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. 31. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. They went to the king and told him everything that had happened. Verse 32. And then the king called in the man he had forgiven and said, "You evil servant, right? I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you what? Have mercy on your fellow servant?" Damn, that hits hard, right? Remember verse 33, okay? So think of the situation again, right? You yourself, you help brother one. Brother one is struggling to keep the law, for example, the Sabbath day, right? Other feast laws because he has work, but you lent money to him. Upon lending that money, that brother one was able to get out of his problems and was able to keep the law. However, this particular brother starts to what? Harass another brother, let's call it brother two, and that brother is struggling to keep the Sabbath. And instead of helping him, what? He just emptily rebuked and said, you know, it's like doing like this. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. So brother two is struggling to keep the Sabbath because he has to what? Provide for his family. But brother one is harassing this particular brother despite being helped by other people, despite being free from, you know, this financial struggles of life. We have to be merciful, right? Verse 33 says, "What? Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant?" Right? The Most High will provide, yes. Therefore, we must have mercy to people, other brothers who are still not able to keep the law due to financial struggles, or, for example, they're trying to keep their right, they want to provide for the Sabbath for people, but in the Sabbath they are mercy. Right? So we have to be wary of these brothers because they are just ungrateful, or what they are, unforgiving debtors, right? You lend them money, and after they get free, they start harassing other brothers. And I think this particular situation fits right to this particular chapter and verse. Hopefully, I was able to enlighten or edify some brothers. We have to be careful of who we are helping. I know everyone wants to help, right? But if the person that we are trying to help will not have mercy on other people, what's the point of helping them, right? So I hope this helps. But what do you think, guys? For me, this is how I interpret it.